No. All right. I'm gonna trade you 2 sheep for that wood. Tell me, honey, does that sound good? 'Cause all I really wanna do is take away longest road from you, yeah. Welcome to these tabletop sessions. Welcome to these tabletop sessions. Hello, fellow gregarious geeks and gamers, and welcome to the 42nd episode of the Tabletop Sessions podcast. This is your monthly dose of tabletop gaming stories and shenanigans. My name is Elias, and with me today, a self-proclaimed board game designer and critic, so why not publisher, Hippocrates.
Hello, Elias. I'm very happy to be here today.
How you doing, Hippo? It's been a long time. We're a little late on this 42nd episode.
Yes, it took us some time, but we had more time to play more games, I guess.
Sort of. I mean, I suppose if this had happened when it was supposed to a couple weeks ago, I would have had no games to talk about. So I'm kind of glad it got delayed. Because I just got back on Sunday from my group here's annual cottage board game trip, which I consider the spiritual successor to TTS Con. So that was nice.
The spiritual successor. I'm happy you're not saying that this is a successor, because it would be heavy, to just replace a bunch of people that, they have lifetime bonds with each other. But you named it just a spiritual successor, so I'm happy for that.
Yeah, well, so it's hard to replace something where you're not allowed to sleep for 24 hours. So
you were allowed to sleep there. Okay.
Yes, we were.
How many days was that?
It was 2 nights. So we get we arrived around 4 p.m. for check-in. We played till 2:30 that night.
Wait, 4 p.m. on a Friday, I guess?
Oh, yeah. So 4 p.m. on a Friday. We played till 2:30. Then we woke up 9 a.m. the next day. Played till about 1 or 2 a.m. And then slept the second night. Woke up at 8 a.m. the next day. Played till about midday, 1 actually. Then we checked out and drove back to Toronto. And there were 6 of us. And it was super nice, actually, because, I was just telling Ipo before we started, I hadn't played a single game basically for the last month. So I don't know if we've made it clear in the past or not, but, Dima and I, we come from Arab backgrounds and are Arab. And we both have a lot of friends and family in Palestine, in Israel, and in Lebanon, between the 3 of us. So we've been very, messed up in terms of mental. We've just been reading, checking the news, and being tired. And, our wonderful friends here keep trying to schedule game days, and we keep saying no. And I feel horrible about it. And, for any of them listening right now, I just, I really want to do something soon. But basically they kept telling us, let's play a game, let's do this. And we're like, we're not there yet. Our mind, we have this physical or mental exhaustion from what's happening. And I almost canceled this trip, actually. Well, our involvement in this trip. I was going to say, keep the money, we paid for it. I just don't think we have the energy to do it. But then we didn't in the end. And I'm really glad that we didn't, because this trip reminded me of 2 very important things as to why we play board games. 1, it's really good sometimes to just be thinking about a game. It's really good for your mind to take a break. And 2, physical, in-person connection is so important. It's so healing. And just being sat around the table, talking to people that you have affection for, and going back and forth and passing cards and there was something very healing and, important about that. And I think that's the core of why we play board games. And that's the core of Tabletop Sessions, which was about the people and the sessions that we play board games with. So other than the fact that I would have had nothing to talk about if I did not take this trip, I am very grateful to the fact that I did, because I feel like I'm starting to become a human again and be part of society once again. So I'm going to start reaching out to friends again and scheduling some time to play games and see friends again and, be a human again. So,
Yeah.
the value of board games, deeper than you thought.
I totally agree with that. I mean, whatever is the situation, spending some time with friends is the best heal, I guess. But I wanted to ask you about this number 6. You said you were 6 going to that. This 6 is a difficult number for, right?
It is, but not so much, because you can do 4 and 2, you can do 3 and 3, which is what we did. But if you want to do a big full day game, which we did on Saturday, there are many games that play 6 that you can do a full day on. So I didn't feel like it was too bad. I think it might be more difficult if you're 7 or anything more than 6, because finding a game that plays everyone is basically impossible. So full day games become really hard.
What did you play with 6 players?
1880 China.
And I was gonna say, what else can you play except an 18xx game? What else can you play with 6 players?
Well, we could play Dominant Species. We could have played
Species,
Virgin Queen. We could have played Twilight Imperium. We could have played Eclipse. Any of those. But most importantly, we could have, and we want to, and I got buy-in from everyone there, and Mo, who's willing to travel up from DC for this, to play Mega Civilization. So
oh my God.
I don't know when you can come to Canada, Ipo, but it might happen without you if you can.
Do you have the game now?
Yeah, I have Mega Civilization.
Why didn't you play it in the cabin? I mean, it would make sense.
Because it would take 2 days.
Just the setup.
Yeah. And we wanted to play with more than one game for the whole weekend. But it will happen. And Mo said he's willing to drive up. So, I think I can get 9 or 10, which seems to be the sweet spot. So I'm excited. I'm excited for when that happens.
In the meantime, I played a lot of games. I played Hegemony, Concordia, Betrayal at House on the Hill. I played The Age of Atlantis, which is a game that I would like to talk about in the future, but I would like to, bag 1 or 2 more games under my belt, and then we'll talk about it. I played also an epic Blood on the Clock Tower, or with the maximum number of players that the game can take, which is 18. It was, with the board game group, we did a Halloween night. And
that makes sense.
We were more than 18. We were like 30 people. So we split, and 18 of us played Blood in the Clock Tower, and some others played other creepy games. I think one of them was the Betrayal at House on the Hill. Or Nemesis, maybe they played. I don't remember.
That makes sense.
And it was a brilliant experience again. I love so much social deduction, and especially Blood on the Clock Tower. But we have talked about it in the past. And we played also the Old King's Crown at some point on Tabletop Simulator, because AK, our friend, wanted to buy this game, and this is now in Kickstarter. And
that's right.
The end date is, I guess, I want to say today, 23rd of November, because are we going to release the episode on 23rd of November?
It'll be the day before I release this episode.
But can you back the game even after the end?
Probably. Yeah. You can probably do a late pledge somewhere. Like, I just got Shikoku 1889. I backed that late on GameFound, and I got that. So you can definitely they probably have some sort of late backing system on Pledge Manager.
Because the game is already funded. I just want to give like 2 points about the game that we played on in Tabletop Simulator. It has a feeling like Innis. If you have played Innis is a game with area control that has, a few regions on the board, a few rules, and it's a deck of like 20 cards. So basically, it's very nice that you really know what's going on even from the first game, because all cards will be recycled and they will come to you and you know what's going on. And the Old King's Crown, I feel it has the same feeling. So I will recommend it, even if I play the game just for one round so far, because we couldn't do it because Mo had some visitors and we finished the game early. But I like the simple idea. I like the idea was that you're just placing a secret card in one of the 3 regions, and the card has a number, and whoever places the highest number is the highest power, and he will win that. But of course, there are several modifiers and things that you can do, and other things that are going on. So I really like this.
So it's a trick-taking game.
No, I wouldn't call it trick-taking. Well, it reminded me of the Lebanese Civil War, if you have played that game.
Oh, God.
Remember that? But it's the same thing. I mean, we were playing a secret card. Okay, for our listeners, the Lebanese Civil War is a game that I have designed, and Elias is
masterpiece.
Like one of the 6 players in this world that have play-tested this game. Successfully play-tested the game. Anyway, it was
brave of you to try to get as many factions as there were in the Lebanese Civil War into a board game. Like that is brave.
Okay, I mean, the Lebanese Civil War winning conditions can only be compared with Oath, I feel. But Oath is close enough. Oh, have you played Oath?
I've not, but you did not sell it to me on your review on the podcast.
Yes. So anyway, okay, yeah. So it was complicated. Anyway, one thing that I would like to say about this Kickstarter campaign is that I've watched the video in the Kickstarter page. It's 4.5 minutes video, and the first 2 minutes is like storytelling, with a beautiful voice, and there is beautiful animation in the background. And I was thinking, who is paying for all this stuff? I mean, we are paying for this, right? Is there a market? I mean, I'm completely indifferent in this kind of marketing, but I understand that people want this, I guess.
They must. I mean, I don't. When I watch those videos, the entire time I'm thinking, but what is the game about? And
exactly. Just tell me about the game. Yeah, okay, there is a background story, I understand, but I mean, I guess if you bring Leonardo DiCaprio to play the main role of the background story, it will make a difference. So this is also making some difference.
Or if you're on more of a budget, you can have me for way less. I'll do that. I'll do the voiceover for you. I cost way less than Leonardo DiCaprio, and some would say I have a nicer voice.
And with way better results.
That's right. Everyone knows that. But I don't know. I don't know the point. I was tempted to buy it based on the art, and then I realized that's a stupid thing to do. And the fact that neither you or AK or Mo,
it's not a stupid thing to do.
The fact that none of you talked about this game after your little session of it, I was like, I don't think I'm going to back it. But it is lovely looking, just lovely.
Yeah, and okay, I want to say, in the history of humankind, people were buying art without the game. They were just buying the art. So now you can buy beautiful art that comes with a game. So I mean, you can do it.
When you're right, you're right, Ipo. I don't know how to counter an argument of such magnitude. well, well thought out logistics. Anyway,
Would you like to share some
so
shenanigans from your cabin story?
I
Anything
would. I would like to
interesting?
move off the topic of the old King's Crown. So yeah, we played a bunch of games. We played Scout. We played Bonanza, Welcome to 1880 China, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Oh, I should have talked about that in this podcast. Fuck. That's such a good story. I'll tell you about it at the end. Sponsio, Factory Funner. There was a game of Now
No,
Boarding.
tell me now.
Well, okay, so at the end of the
is it a
first
long
day.
story?
No, at the end of the first day, Dima decides at like almost 1 a.m., why don't we play Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective? And everybody, it was the day we drove to the cabin. So everyone was like barely conscious. And yet they agreed because everybody loves Dima. So we sat there and we took out the game, started playing it, and we're doing our best.
Wait.
You look around.
Did you have wine and a fireplace?
We had a fireplace and someone was drinking wine. Yes. So yes, we did.
Someone. No.
Yeah, well,
not enough.
some of us were drinking other drinks. But anyway, the point is, we're playing this game. I look around, everybody's dead, right? Like, I'm trying my best to do voices for the characters, but people are going in and out of sleep. And I just like, everyone's just staring and reading the newspapers and stuff like that. And about halfway through the game, somebody just goes, wait, I have it. And then they just present this case, which at the time seemed extremely compelling, right? And so we just go down the rabbit hole of just this random shit that this guy found in the newspaper. And we solve all these things relating to this story. And we go to the end and we ask all the questions. And it turns out we know nothing about the main case. Nothing about the main case. And we know everything about the side case. And somebody goes, why did we start following this line? And then they're like, yeah, well, Lucas said, blah, blah, blah. And like, yeah, but where did we come to that from? And Lucas was like, oh, it's just something I found in the newspaper. So
that's the best. That's the best Sherlock Holmes consulting detective story. I mean, it gives you the whole idea of the game.
And then the next morning, we all come for breakfast. And then like halfway through breakfast, I'm like, who the fuck was Stephanie? Like just some random character that they asked questions about. We didn't even know who she was. We're like, who the fuck is Stephanie? And they're like, I know. Who's it was a disaster. And yet it shows you why the game is so good. Because it has those things you can fall down and rabbit holes and things that exist beyond the story. And the side quest was so engaging and enthralling that we spent the whole time investigating that rather than the main story, which we just abandoned. Just literally abandoned it, and we were so tired. Nobody
but
remembered
you had
to
fun
connect
doing
back to it. We had a great time. Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping too much now, but this won't take that long. So a game we played multiple times was called Scout by Kei Kajino from Oink Games. Came out in 2019. Do you know Oink Games? They're the ones that do the little box games. They had Fake Artist Goes to New York. They had Insider. They had games like that. So they just come in these tiny little boxes. You remember A Fake Artist Goes to New York?
Yeah, but have I played that?
Yeah, I mean, I had it for years, so I assume you played it.
I remember the box, but I don't remember playing it.
Yeah, the little pink box. Exactly. So they just remember that they're about that size. A tiny little box, about half the size of your phone. And it usually has a lot of game in it. And somebody brought it out and they were like, it's a ladder climbing game. I think Chang brought it out. And I love ladder climbing games because Tichu is one of my favorite games. So I was immediately like, all right, I'm in. So a ladder climbing game is like, rather than have a trick game where like you're all playing cards into a center pool and somebody wins that whole trick, you keep having to beat the card that's in the center. So it goes round and round and you keep having to beat it with either sets or sequences, right? So sequence being like 4, 5, 6, a set being like 2, 2, 2, right? So something like that. But it's a mixture of Tichu and Bonanza. because other than being a ladder climbing game, it's like Bonanza because you can't rearrange your hand, right? So initially, and there's no partners like teach you, and it's a much simpler game. But the cards basically have a number at the top and a number at the bottom. So they're like you can rotate the card and have a completely different hand. So when you first get your hand, you look at it and you decide which direction you're going to be playing that round in. So you do have a choice initially. And you can play cards, unlike Bonanza, from anywhere in your hand. So it doesn't have to be just from the edge. So you can play cards. So let's say you had like a 2, 5, and a 2. You could play that 5, and then the two twos will now be next to each other. So in the future, you can play two twos as a set because they're next to each other. So you're building sets and sequences in your hand by playing other cards, right? And
Yeah.
you just have to keep beating the card there, and if you can't beat the card in the center, you scout a card from the center. So let's say the person played 2, 3, 4. Well, the 2, the 3, and the 4 also have numbers on the other side because remember they're rotatable cards. You can take a card from either end of the sequence or the set, and then you can rotate it to either direction and insert it anywhere in your hand. So you're building these sets and sequences in your hand by adding cards and by playing cards. And of course, when you do it, there is a benefit to that person who you're stealing the card from. They get a point, right, at the end of that round. And you play a number of rounds equal to the number of players. But also, it makes the hand more beatable. So if somebody plays 3, 4, 5, 6, that's really hard to beat because that's 4 cards long. Because the number one factor is how many cards are in the sequencer set. Then, if it's a sequence or a set beats a sequence. And then what the number is, the highest number is in the sequencer set. So 3, 4, 5, 6 is super hard to beat. But if I take the 6 out and then somebody takes the 3 out, now it's just 4, 5. So I could beat that with a 2, 2. Just it becomes much easier to beat. So you're taking cards out and you're building it up, and it's just such a clever puzzle. And so basically, at the end of each round, all the cards, the round ends when somebody stops playing cards. Sorry, when somebody finishes all the cards in their hands, or when somebody plays a hand down, a sequence or a set that goes all the way around the table back to the person and hasn't been beaten. When that happens, all the cards in your hand become negative points, and all the cards you've collected by beating them become positive points, plus all the tokens from when people scouted cards from your sets and sequences. I don't know if that was clear, but it's a great game. It's like you're building and refining the cards in your hand and the order in your hand to make these awesome sets and sequences. It's quick, super quick. You can play it in 20 minutes. It's fun. I played it multiple times at multiple player counts. And there were multiple times in the games where everyone would go, ooh, or like, what? Like, and that's usually how I know a game is good.
Have you ever played Tichu before?
Yeah, I own Tichu. I've played it many times. I mentioned it earlier. It's one of my favorite games.
So is it like the deck? Is it similar to Tichu? Is it like a
No. It's cards 1 through 10, and then again they're on both sides. So like a card might have a 1, and then you rotate it. On the other side it has a 7, and then there's multiple combinations of each. So, and it's much simpler. There's no partners like in Tichu, right? So, the ladder climbing is easy, but so many times you're playing, somebody looks like they're falling behind, and then they drop like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and everybody's like, what? And like multiple times in the game, people just collectively gasped or screamed. And I think that's amazing that in a 20-minute game, multiple times that keeps happening. Everyone breaks out laughing or in shock. And also, I saw like you could like destroy like the strategy of the game if it's advantageous to you. So in one of the games we played 3 players, Lucas was playing, and at the start of the third round, he had 15 points. Second place had 0 points, and third place had -7. So he was well ahead. So he's like, well, I need to end this as soon as possible. So the first time somebody played a set of 2 cards, the other player couldn't beat it because it was like the second hand, took 1 card, And then Lucas, who clearly could beat it because it was a single card and you could beat the single card, chose to scout it because then it got back to the first player.
Oh.
And so he had to get minus points for the cards in his hands, but he had 15 points ahead of the second player. So he ended the game with 5 points to -2 to -10. So it kind of broke it slightly, but it was still an excellent experience. And you can only really do that if you gain a huge advantage. So it's not something you can consistently do.
How many rounds did you play of this game?
Total, I played like, I don't know, 8 or something. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
How much time is it like to play one game?
I'd say 20 minutes to 30 maximum. Less, 15 to 20 maybe.
So it's addictive.
It's addictive. I really loved it. And honestly, it was my favorite game of the cottage trip. Like, I kept going back to it. Yeah.
That's high praise.
I would say if you like ladder climbing games like Tichu or Chimera, but you want one that's super quick, but also has those moments of like, what? I can't believe he just did that. This is a great game. And I want to buy a copy, but Dima says Cheng already has it, so I can't have it. So, but it's like $20. Like, I don't know. I feel like I might buy it anyway. I don't think she'll divorce me over $20. So I think I might pick it up. Yeah.
But I really didn't like it so much. I mean,
she never played it. She never played it.
Oh, so that's why. That's why Dima didn't want you to buy it, because she doesn't know what she misses.
Exactly. She doesn't know the quality of this game is like a fine wine. It's beautiful. Anyway, I adore it. I think if you've been thinking about Scout, if you've been on the fence about Scout, pick it up. It's excellent. Really, really excellent game. High recommend from me. And I am glad that a couple of people I know have this game. So I will try to get it in after or before other games in the future.
Nice. All right. So
what do you think? Did it get you interested in trying Scout?
Actually, I realized when you were explaining the experience, I was thinking that I have Tichu, and I have not played it for since I bought it.
Tichu is fantastic.
Yeah, so I was thinking I should bring it to the game nights. I'm not sure if card games. I mean, I feel that Tichu and all these games that I was playing, like Whist and Bridge and other card games, should we mix these games in the hobby, or do you feel that this is like something for
that is a great point. I actually think it's very important. So I do think card games, you can play them with family or some people usually. So I play Tichu with my parents. I've played oftentimes with my parents and my sister, or Dima and my parents, and they really enjoy it. So I do think it's easier to get them to play Tichu than it is to get my gaming group to play Tichu. So maybe there is another arena for it. But this game sort of solves that by not looking like a traditional deck of cards. It just looks like colors and big numbers, and it looks like a game you would play at a board game night. It doesn't look like a deck of cards. And I do and also, unlike Tichu, which is about when you climb the ladder with your partner, so it's all about timing and when you start and how to set things up. This one, I found like a lot of joy in the puzzle building of how to get your hand to be perfect. So like, which card should I play in which order? What speed should I go at to get my cards to work? So it felt much more puzzly, as opposed to a card game. So I think you could definitely sell this one at a board game night. And because it's 20 minutes, you would teach you, if you're playing to 100 points, that's going to be a couple hours, or 200 points or whatever.
Yeah.
Usually you play to 500 or 1,000. So that's going to be like 2 hours or 3 hours. So, so I think this is,
I feel
if you do want to play something like Teach You on game night, you should pick up Scout, because you could definitely sell that as a start of the night or end of the night game. much easier than you could with Tichu.
I feel this is the problem with the traditional card games, that they need some time for a person to grasp what's going on, and you're supposed to play the whole night the same game. And this is something that usually is not happening in a game night. So, yeah, I don't see any other difference. I mean, I guess you can teach some people to play Tichu in a game night, but again, they need to spend some time in order to appreciate the game. That's my feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what I wanted to talk about, actually, this is a game that I played 1 month ago, and this is Dominant Species Marines. So, I got this game from my last trip in summertime. I wanted to, one of my favorite games, I think our old listeners should know by now that one of my favorite games is Dominant Species. But a friend of mine has Dominant Species here in Qatar, and I found Dominant Species Marine, that is a game that it could play in 2.5 hours instead of 5 hours. That is the Dominant Species game. Of course, Dominant Species Marine is also a game for 4 players rather than 6 players that the original Dominant Species can play. So we played Dominant Species Marine, and it's a very nice game, but we played it 2 times, and I felt there was something missing from my original experience with my, with the Dominant Species game. And I couldn't understand what was exactly the problem. I was thinking maybe it's the count, maybe with 6 players is more epic. For the people that they don't know, both are area majority games where you score points being different species in prehistoric Earth, where the environment is constantly changing and you're trying to survive, basically. So the difference between these two, I found, is that in the Dominant Species game, you have a dominance per tile for cards scored, while in the Dominant Species Marine, you score on the Earth for workers and action markers. I don't know if I should go. Actually, no. I will go over my comments on the difference, which is that the basic problem with the Marine is counting dominance is a nightmare. Counting dominance in Dominant Species in the original game is that you say, okay, so my reptiles can be fed with, let's say, flowers and bugs. And in this tile, there are 2 flowers and 2 bugs. So 2 times 2 for flowers plus 2 times 2 for bugs, I have 8 points of dominance. So this is, you must do this for every tile, and every time somebody is changing the terrain type, or every time somebody is changing what his species can be fed with, you need a new count. So the solution that the designer, by the way, the designer is the same for both games, of course. The solution that the designer gave with the Marine version is that you just count dominance per element for the whole board, and that's all. And if you have more elements in your board, then you get an extra worker. You just compare yourself with the other personal boards. And you get 1 more action pawn. And of course, action pawns are very important because you have 1 more action per round. And this is one thing that I feel Marine is better. But this solution creates another problem, because the whole game has those actions of adaptation and regression and abundance, where you add tiles on the board that can change where your species can survive and how much fit you are with in these terrains. And now all these are less important, or maybe they just feel that way because I guess the designer knows what he's doing, or maybe not, I don't know. But these adaptation, regression, and abundance is like 1/3 of the actions. And also, so all these now are feeling less important, and this is like 1/3 of the game. So this is a point for dominant species for the original game. Now, in both games, they have this mechanism where the ice is coming and it's, making deserts around the board, and species are dying. And the difference now is that while in the original game you score triangular numbers, so for each extra glacier you score 2, then 3, then 4 more points. In the marine game, it's just 1 point per tile, and that's all. So this feels less important, which I didn't like. I really like the mechanism where the ice is coming and it's occupying the bigger portion of the earth every round, and you see the species dying, and you can score a lot of points, and it's important to have just this one survival in its ice place. The other thing that is happening is that with the Wanderlust action, where you add hexagons in the board, you add terrains in the board. Now you score more if you manage to place the same terrain type next to the same terrain type on the board. And this creates regions of the same, like 3 or 4 hexagons with jungle. While in the previous, in the original game, you just need to put it next to other hexagons and you're going to score points.
The most possible adjacent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are other minor differences that some are better with the original game, some are better with the Marines game. But one important for me is the special traits that in the original game are important, because it gives you really... it kind of makes the game asymmetric, like each faction has its own trait. So like if you are the birds, you can move 2 hexagons with your move instead of 1 that every other species is moving. So in dominant species, it's very important. While in the Marines version, traits are just random cards that you draw in the beginning of the game. You draw 2, you pick 1. And that means now that it's random, the difference between the species, and the weakest species, according to the order, is losing all tiebreakers, as in the original game, also in the Marines. You're losing all tiebreakers on the board. So now, while in the original game, if you are the weakest species, where you lose all the tiebreakers, you have a better trait. So this will balance the game. In Marines, there's no such mechanism. So if you are the weakest, the only thing that will happen is that you will go first in the first round, and that's all. Because in the end of the round, whoever does the last action, then the next player does the first action of the second round. So it's not the weakest is gonna go first in every round.
Interesting. So you can't gain placement like you can in dominant species. Dominant species, that first action on the action row, it's called initiative or initiation. Basically, it puts your species up 1 space on the track.
Yeah, exactly. So you can play earlier in the next round. Yeah, so you don't have this in Marines. There are some people arguing in Board Game Geek forums that this first action that you can do before the other players is very important, because you can go back to this mechanism of the where you get the extra action pawn, so you can do that action and get an extra action. So that's really important. But I don't think that convinces me that it's balanced. But at the same time, it's a famous designer. He has play tested the games, I know for sure, hundreds of times. So I guess we just need to play it more.
Yeah.
Balancing all these things that I have counted, I found 4 bullet points where the original game was better, and 4 bullet points where the new game is better. So I guess you can have both in your collection, and you can play Marines, I guess, better with 4 players. Or if you are more than 4 players, for sure you should play Dominant Species. That's my...
I mean, Dominant Species is excellent with 4 players. I just want to point out.
Yeah, I don't want to say that because then I shouldn't have the Marine game. Right?
No, okay. So we played Marine online on Tabletop Simulator like a year or 2 years ago. And it was good. It was nice. I like that there were some different concepts, but it still felt like Dominant Species. I would say like, I can't review it as well as you did because I've only played it once online. But I did feel like if someone played Dominant Species Marine, they would understand if they liked Dominant Species or not. I didn't feel like it's a whole different game. I think it's very interesting that you said what you talked about, the way of counting dominance versus adjusting it now so that it's board wide, removing the value of adaptation, aggression, and abundance of those food that are either going to go on your sheet, on your player sheet, or on the board. That's such a big deal in the game. It's just like by introducing an element to an area, you've now made it viable to another player that's going to come in and all of a sudden. Because whilst dominance is very important for the cards, it's not the most important for scoring points, which is more about population than it is about dominance. So just by making it viable, somebody could just send in so many of their species in there. So that, I think, remains. But by changing its value and dominance, I don't know if it becomes as attractive or not. It's interesting. I think it's an interesting thing. It's like a rebalancing, because these are the 2 points that I always think of in dominant species is adaptation, aggression, and abundance, using those food tokens. And the other thing is that the glaciation strategy is a real strategy. So making your species capable of surviving on glaciation, getting that glaciation card every turn.
So now you understand why I'm missing this feeling of original dominant species when I play Marines.
Yes.
But at the same time, my friends that have played Marines first and then I introduced them to dominant species, they were shocked by the mechanism of counting for its hexagon the dominance. They were saying, no, this doesn't make sense. I mean, the rules probably are not like that. You're wrong. And I said, no, I have played this many times. Many times. Yeah. They were shocked of how complicated it is. And then I realized that they are right. I mean, for modern board games, and when I say modern, I guess I mean the last decade. I mean, no, Dominant Species before 2010. Yeah, it's like 2009.
Dominant Species is 2010.
Yeah. So, I guess it's too complicated. I mean, it takes too much time.
I guess when you've played it as much as we have, it's not that complicated because you just immediately look at it and like you sort of have an idea in your head of who's got what and if they've adapted. And you're like, well, yeah. And you're not on every tile to have to consider that. So you just look at it, you go, and you figure it out. Like, plus you tend to have a lot of people specializing tiles. So people go and put a lot of water tokens around this tile. So it's not as complicated once you've played it, but I can definitely see how when you come in and you're like, wait, there's like 20 tiles on this board. We have to constantly check
exactly,
it. I can see it's definitely clunky in that regard, but you don't feel it as much when you know the game and you're familiar and you can quickly count it. So I think from what I'm hearing from you, if you have one, you don't need to feel sad that you don't have the other. If you love the game the way we do.
But I do, Elias. I do.
The problem is you've had too much experience with the first game. So you can't get it out of your head. If you had just played Marine, you might not think so highly of regular dominant species. I know that when I played Marine, I was like, I'm down to play it anytime, but I didn't feel like I need to own it. I'm very happy with my copy. It plays 4 players super well, so I don't really feel like there's a need. Some would say it's better at 4 than at 6. So that's awesome. Thank you for talking about that. I really am happy to hear this.
Says it's best with 5.
Oh, that's cool. I might have played it with 5, but I've played it with 4. I've played it with 6. I've played it with 3, where everyone has 2 species. I'm yet to try it with 2, where everyone has 3 species, but that sounds like a nightmare. But I would say like 3 and up.
Yeah, not 3.
It's a really good game. So I thanks for that. I always love talking about dominant species. So. Yeah.
So that was dominant species versus Dominant species marines.
If you like water, get marine. If you don't care, if you don't if you don't care about the color blue, you can get either one. Who cares? Anyway,
that's another difference that I didn't mention. Sorry, I have to interrupt you again.
Go for it.
Yeah, marines has species from the sea that I have no idea what they are. That's also important. Like the I don't even remember, like custodians and like the lobsters and
crustacean.
The fishes and the lobsters and I mean I really, while the original one, the reptiles, okay, the birds, the bugs, whatever was there, the mammals.
I would argue that most people know fishes, reptiles, crustaceans, and cephalopods. I don't feel like it's too much.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
But you have a degree in biology, right?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
And I did a 3-week marine biology course where we camped on the beach for 3 weeks, and the class was on the beach.
See, so you are
in San Diego.
You're the wrong person to talk about this.
Maybe I should buy a marine just to have memories. Anyway,
yeah.
On the topic of GMT games, this is not a GMT game, but other 18xx games have been GMT games. The main, no, I think it's Lookout Games was the publisher for the copy we had. So my friend Carol, last year during our cottage board game trip, I introduced everyone other than Dima, obviously, who had played, to 18xx games. They had only played, the closest they had played was City of the Big Shoulders, which is like an 18xx Euro, basically. And they played all the like Irish Gauge, Iberian, blah, blah. They'd played all those. So they were like 18xx adjacent, but they hadn't played an 18xx. So I took 1846. We were 5 people that year, last year. I taught everyone how to play 18xx, and they played it, and we all had a good time. And right soon after we got back, like a month later, Kirill bought 1880 China. And we've been trying to schedule a game for it, and it didn't happen until this year. So at this point, we're at the point where we're like, okay, the trip needs to be 3 nights so we can give 1 full day to an 18xx game, so that the other day we can play other like semi-long games, because we don't get to play a lot of other semi-long games, because if we're going to play an 18xx every time, it's going to take up most of one of the days. Anyway, so this one's designed by Helmut Ohli and Lonnie Ogler, the guys who did Russian Railroads. One of them did 18 Lilliput. They did 18 CZ. They did, And our version was published by Lookout Games, 2010. But this was the new version. It had a pretty cover. It's still ugly on the inside, but pretty cover. And if you know anything about 18xx, you'll know that they're all kind of based off of each other. So this one is based on the 1829 style of 18xx game, but it has communism. that's the central theme. Yeah. And actually does a pretty good job. I will tell you, it has a pretty good job of the communism coming through. So
free
I'm not going to tell you how I'm not sure. I'm not going to tell you how 18xx works, but the basic idea is you run companies. You have operating rounds, which is where the companies are running the trains and paying out to shareholders, and then you have share rounds where you, as the person, are basically building your stock portfolio, and you run a company in the operation rounds if you have the most stock in that company, so you become the president. And at the end of the game, the determinant of if you're winning or not is how much money you personally have. Nobody actually gives a shit how your company is doing. So that's an important thing to remember. So that's the basic concept of 18xx. We can go into more detail another time if you'd like, but for now, that should be enough. So how does communism affect the game? Well, there's a period. So the game goes through ages, which are usually in all 18xx games, it triggers when certain types of trains are purchased. So trains get better throughout, and when the first of a kind of train is picked up, a certain age starts in the game. So communism basically starts when a certain kind of train is first purchased and ends when another kind of train is first purchased. So there's a period of the game and the train rush where communism takes over. And what happens during communism? Stock values don't change. So
Which makes sense.
it has a yeah. So you have a stock market in the game, and basically every time you pay out dividends, it goes up marginally. Every time you don't pay dividends, your value goes down minimally. Every round that your company's fully bought out, your company gets a jump to the next row. And every time someone sells one of your shares, your company drops a row. So there's a lot of stock manipulation. But this game only has full payouts or no payouts. So there's no partial payouts. So if people start buying your company up, it's very hard to keep any money in your company without losing value in your stock, because you'll have to withhold all the dividends. No one will get anything, and you'll lose value as a company. But when communism happens, that doesn't matter. So if you want to like drop a bunch of your shares during communism, so that like more money comes out every time you pay, you can do that without losing value in your shares. If you want to withhold dividends, you can do that all throughout communism. And the way that the game is funded is when you start it, you pay out for however many shares you want, 2, 3, or 4, 20%, 30%, 40%. Each share is worth 10%. And then you get 50% of your company in funding. Once the first 5 shares have been purchased, they will release the other 50% of shares to your company. But you want as many shares not bought so that your company can operate. So if you can get 50% of your company bought out before communism, you will get that 50% injection of cash. And then when communism happens, you can drop a bunch of shares back into the market without ruining your stock value. And then once basically communism ends and you're paying out every round, so you get growth in your share value, your company is still getting a bunch of money without having to withhold the dividends. The only way people can stop that is if they buy your shares. And if they buy your shares, they're going to inadvertently boost the value of your company. It's very interesting how communism plays into the game. I actually played the first half of the game.
Sorry, thematically it doesn't make sense, right? Like there was no period of communism
I'm
in
sure
China
you can stretch it.
Ended. Also, if communism comes, then there is privatization and there's no stock market.
It's very interesting. Sure. It's not privatization, because the way that thematically it's done is when you buy shares, you're not paying the company. So when you buy shares, you're paying the bank, the state-owned bank. There is no bank to break in this game. The bank is infinite. So basically, the game will only happen when the train rush happens, and there will always be the same number of stock rounds, because a stock round is only triggered when a train stack is depleted. Type of train stack is depleted.
Interesting.
So there will always be an equal number. Yeah, it's very unique from what I've played. So I started the game as a investor for 2 reasons. One, I kind of got screwed over on the private company auction in the beginning, and I didn't have very much money. But 2, it was my turn to cook dinner. So I decided I'll play as an investor. So I only have to play during the stock rounds, as long as people were paying me out when they ran for my shares. And then when I finished cooking dinner, I could maybe buy a company. It wasn't so the best strategy.
That's a valuable lesson for 18xx players out there.
I made lasagna. It was really good. Anyway, so I did that, and then I bought a company halfway through after dinner, and I had a great time doing that. So if that is something that you have to do, like it's fun. It's fun anyway. But the thing is, at that point, everyone had 2 to 3 companies already, and unfortunately, this is not a game you can win. I believe, with my one play of it, as an investor, because your stock portfolio is limited. Unlike some other 18xx games, there is no parts of the stock market where you start getting double and triple bumps if you pay out shares. So it's always just going up or to the right. and so it's a slow rise, and the most it can be worth is 200 yuan. If you're somewhere in the middle of the table, your company's worth like 150. So if you peek out at the top right of the share table, each share is worth 200. It's not very much. So unfortunately, it seems very much to be a cash game. So getting the best possible payouts every turn and hoarding that cash, because it also has a 12 share limit. Of course, Cheng figured that out early, and he started collecting cash early in the game. By the time we figured it out, it was when we were counting the score. So it was too late to do it. But Cheng figured it out, and he destroyed all of us, of course. But it was the only game he won that weekend, so we let him have it. We didn't want him to feel bad about losing all throughout the weekend. And the funny thing about it is,
shots fired.
all three of Cheng's companies were three of the lowest 4 or 5 valued companies in the game. So that shows you that the value of the share is not as important in this game as it is in, say, 1846. It was very much a pay me out, hoard cash kind of game. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that was different than everything that I've experienced. So to not to go too much more into detail, negatives that I've heard: the rule book apparently is awful, unusable. I didn't read it, but that's what I've been told. And basically, we used a fan-made reference mostly. So I think if you could make a civil player aid for us, I think that would
yes,
great.
Okay, yes. Send me the game, and I will make one.
I'll buy you a copy
of the same.
Yeah.
Of the same value as the Peloponnese Civil War.
Well, we still use your 1846.
The Pericles one. The
Pericles,
1846.
yeah, but your 1846 one is the reason I'm thinking it's so good. Anyway, another bad thing is I did feel like. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to argue that I don't believe that there is an 18xx game you can win just as an investor. I mean, in my experience.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there is, sure, but I do know that it is a viable strategy to play part of the game as an investor. I was making the most money per turn at the end of the game, not just as my company, but me personally. But it wasn't enough rounds, like, period. Like, everybody else had been making a ton of money.
Oh.
So because my company was making the most and I owned 70% of my company, because there's no limit to how much of your company you can own. So my company was running like $790 a turn. Everyone else was running in the 400s and 500s, and I was getting 7 shares of that. So it just wasn't enough rounds for me to catch up. So I do feel like in other games you can play investor, and I think the reason is not that it's flawed. I think the reason is the way the stock system works. So the usual 18xx game is you play a number of operating rounds, then you play a stock round. Either 1, 2, or 3 operating rounds, then you play a stock round. So you're always going to have a stock round pretty consistently. In this game, it was very much dependent on how quickly people bought trains. And there was a fixed number of stock rounds. So early in the game, I wasn't making much money because I only had like 3 or 4 shares. And that's just how much money I had. People floated pretty high when they started the game. And unfortunately, it meant that for the first half of the game, people were just making a lot more money than I was. So maybe, again, it just might be my strategy. But I did feel like investor strategy was more limited than usual. I really liked the communism aspect of the game. Like, I felt like it made an impact on how we approached it. Although I did feel also like it was very short. I think we all felt that. It just so happened to align with when people's trains rusted. So when communism started, it also led to a train rush. People were buying trains. So the communism period was actually very short. One person actually triggered it at the end of his turn, Robert, and before it got back to the start of Robert's turn, communism was over. So he never actually got to do anything within communism. So that's interesting. I like that they simplified turn order. So turn order isn't based on your operating order, rather, isn't based on your position in the stock market. It's based on what you floated your your company at, so it stays consistent throughout the game. So at least, at the very
Oh,
least, it's very easy to look at and be like, this is the turn order. So I did like that that was different and it was simple and nice. I enjoyed it a lot. I would definitely play it again, but we played 11 hours. So
what?
like,
11 now? Okay, yeah.
to be fair, the
Like
first
a proper
2 hours
18xx
were,
game.
yeah, like the first 2 hours were us kind of like teaching and remembering 18xx rules. One
And
guy there had
it
never
takes a
played an
lot of time with all
18xx.
this bureaucracy in communist China and things, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
And also, I had
it's,
to make lasagna, and we had dinner halfway through. So I don't
I
think
have to
those were.
say, communist China is a very strange background for a capitalist game like 18xx. Like it's the most capitalist competitive game that I know, I think. And yeah, okay, so these guys took it to China and there is a communist break. Okay, interesting. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
It is. And the,
it's very good.
pictures you sent were really like impressive and beautiful for an 18xx game.
Yeah, for an 18xx game. So, I mean, I think Carol bought it because of that communism thing, so he thought it'd be an interesting aspect. So I think like the limited aspect it played in the game maybe wasn't the best thing, but I also feel like next time we play it, we'll have a better approach to like communism is coming. There's gonna be a rush soon because trains are rusting. Let's like dump, like just like withhold
Did you
all the
use
stocks, dump stuff.
poker chips?
We used poker chips. Yeah, we have iron clays and we use poker chips. But all in
Oh,
all, I
nice.
really liked it. I would play it again. I think it would go faster next time because 11 and a half hours included the teach, right? So that's, one guy had never
Yeah.
played an 18xx and none of us had played 1880. So we had to teach that guy 18xx as a concept, and then Carol had to tell us the differences in 1880. But he did very well. I think he came in second or third, that new guy. So I think all in all, it's great. And we also had dinner and like it was a lot
Yeah.
of fun. It was great. I would play it again. I think we
It's
could
a
get it played
day.
in 6 hours next time. Yeah, maybe half a day. Maybe half a day. Um, I think 6 to 7 hours next time if everyone's already played. But it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was one of my the 18xx games that I've enjoyed the most, actually. One of them. So I really had a nice time. And maybe it's because I wasn't brain dead at the
All
end
right,
because I played the
beautiful.
first half as it's not that beautiful. Calm down. But,
No, I mean,
but
beautiful experience, like beautiful story.
yeah, I had a very nice time, and I think everyone did. And basically, we've come out of it being like, all right, we need to get 1889 played soon because everyone has like the basic rules in their head, so we can get it taught in like 15, 20 minutes and get started on the game. So, because I just got 1889 as well, so I'll let you know when I do play that. That one looks beautiful. You should look up 1889 Shikoku. That's a gorgeous 18xx.
Yeah, yeah.
Dima
I
disagrees. She
saw that.
says
Yeah.
it's okay. But what does
That's
she
a
know? That's why
heresy.
she's not on the podcast anymore. But yeah,
You know,
that's all I got to say. I
uh,
enjoyed it tremendously.
I had a thing I wanted to say about the actually in the Hippocratic corner, but since this was a lookout game, I want to say that lookout games, published Forest Shuffle. That's a game that
Hmm.
came out with no plastic shrink wrap because they're trying to be environmentally friendly,
Wow.
and they had a little adhesive tab decks wrapped in a thin paper, and the decks were wrapped in with an adhesive, and that was all. And so you couldn't tell if the box was used or not, of course, I guess. But what do you think about it?
I think as much as we can do to limit plastic use, I think that's great. Um, I have received games in the past that didn't come with plastic wrap, and I was never like, "Oh my god, my game has been destroyed by the air."
Yeah.
Like it's fine. Like I think a tab is a nice way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I had second-hand games that they were great,
Exactly.
and I couldn't see but there is some feeling of fulfillment when you first cut the shrink wrap and you open the game. No.
I don't think so. I've never enjoyed cutting the shrink wrap. I just kind of feel like it's unnecessarily there. I understand why they have to do it for shipping purposes and so on, but if there's a tab or something holding it close, I think that's fine. I know there was another game called like Earthborn Warriors or something like that, Earthborn Rangers, and apparently the whole game you could literally go and like plant it in the ground, and it would like decompose into nature, and I think that's awesome.
Because it was a horrible game.
Of course, why else? But I think as much as we can do to minimize our impact, we should. So I'm glad to see they're doing it. Shout out to Lookout Games for being awesome.
Yeah, bravo, Lookout Games. And okay, so let's see. Oh, wait, now it's the time for our Hippocratic Corner, right?
Yeah, it is. Woohoo! He flipped the table on me there. Hippocratic Corner.
So let's see, because our top 5, as you know today, is top 5 publishers. So let's see if Lookout Games made it to our top 5 publishers ever before starting. Actually, would you like to tell me what did you think before starting listing publishers?
So my criteria. So I was thinking what it means to be a top 5 publisher, and initially I was thinking, oh, does that mean their customer service? Does that mean component quality, art? And then I decided to disqualify all of that as criteria. There's only one criteria that I'll be doing it. Is the publisher name going to push me towards wanting to buy the game or not? So if I see the publisher, if I don't know a game, I'm like, oh, that was published by XYZ, am I likely to buy this game? And if the answer is yes, that put them higher on my list. If not, because you can argue all day about component quality and art, but a lot of the people I love have terrible component quality and art. So I'm not going to pretend that that's a major factor in there. And customer service, whatever. I'm not calling and being like, excuse me, my game is defective. That's not really. But there is one thing I wanted to say, one disqualification, because it's huge. The publisher can't just be a publisher. It can't be on my list just because they do the games of one designer or one design team. Like, that's more of top 5 designers. So, for example, CGE didn't make my list because Vlada is the reason I love CGE. That's more of I love Vlada.
Oh my God.
Hold on. AV Studio just does Alban VR games. Whirligig Games just does Cole Whirly games. And even what would be my number one Splatterspellen are disqualified. If I had to pick without this criteria, Splatterspellen would be my number one.
God.
But because they only do games by Jeroen Domen and Joris Versinga, that's more for me, I think, a choice of top 5 designers. So that was my disqualification. Let me know what yours is.
That was okay. So before saying about this disqualification thing, I was going to say I couldn't agree more with what you said before, because I and I'm reading my notes now. I have written down that the best publisher is all about trust. It's not about components. It's not about art. It's not about number of good games published.
Mm-hmm.
It's about consistency in publishing good games.
Yes.
Which means that if someone tells me that she's giving me a random game and I can only pick the publisher, what is my order of these publishers that I would pick?
I love it.
But I don't have this disqualification.
And I think that's fine. I think that's fine. I felt like Splatterspellen. I just love those designers. Like,
yeah.
I don't know that Splatterspellen is like, I don't know. I feel like I was picking the designers. I didn't feel it was fair to pick Cole Verley or the Splatter guys or CGE, because I looked at my list of games I love from CGE and it was just all Vlada games. So I'm like, that doesn't mean the publisher's
Yeah.
good. That means Vlada's good. So,
but do you have any honorable mentions?
I have one. And it's because these guys, they do a lot of reprints.
And I'm mentioning it now because my honorable mention is CGE.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. Why are they honorable? Why didn't they make your list?
But I was thinking that it's exactly because what you said, because most of the games are Vlada games.
Yeah.
And I found out that I also loved Jolkin and Shipyard.
That's
from
great
CGE.
games.
But that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are great games, but there are better publishers if we just leave Vlada on the side.
Yeah. I have similar, not a similar, but my honorable mention, the reason they didn't make the list is a lot of their stuff that they're publishing in quotation is them just bringing it to other markets. But they have great taste, but the games tend not to be originally them. And those are Capstone and Spielworks. Those two, I adore Capstone and Spielworks. But a lot of games is just them bringing it to other markets. They did Arkwright, Three Kingdoms Redux, The Estate, Wildcatters, La Granja, but none of them were the original publishers, I believe, of any of those. So there you go. So that would be my two honorable mentions are Capstone and Spielworks.
I have another honorable mention, and that's Hans im Glück.
Okay.
Which is a German publisher, which apparently in German it means Hans in happiness. And these guys, I found out that they have published all of my old favorite games, the games that I grew up with, like Die Macher, El Grande, Dominion, Tigris and Euphrates, Russian Railroads, Carcassonne. I mean, I had all these games, right, in my collection. Citadels, Modern Art, Stone Age, Thurn and Taxis.
But they do a lot of reprinting and bringing to other markets. So, like a game that wants to go to Germany, they can go to like Eggertspiel or like Hans im Glück or like one other like. So a lot of games are not them that are developing and bringing the games to market, but they have great taste and they bid for the right games. So I can totally see why you would put them on there.
All right. Do you want to start with your number 5?
Yes, I do. My number 5 is a small publisher that I feel like they do interesting games. I feel like they're not a list I would say, oh, wow, if I had to pick my best publisher per me personally. But I think if you ever mention their name, I would be interested in what they came out with. And that's Osprey Games. Because just to give you a list of games I've had or played from them, Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space, The Ravens of Trisahashri, Cryptid, the Undaunted series, London, High Society. They tend to do a great job with the art and the production quality, but more importantly, all those games have interesting qualities and they come to the table, quite a bit. And I just think if you told me a game was by Osprey, I'd be interested. So number 5 is Osprey.
I think that Ricardo's diving game, remember that? That was also Osprey's. So yes, that's an excellent choice, I think, but I didn't really consider having them in the... I was considering Spielworks that you mentioned before as a very good company. My number 5 is a company that I actually didn't want to include because they are publishing so many games, but then just reading the games that are good, I was thinking, no, there's no way I can leave GMT out of this. So number 5 is GMT because I was thinking Dominant Species, Cuba Libre, Time of Crisis, Twilight Struggle, Virgin Queen, Pericles, Mr. President. They have like, for each of these games, they have published like 50 bad games. But just for these games, I was thinking, we should include GMT. That is something that people should look at. Maybe investigate more when they're buying something. But So that's my number 5.
Excellent choice. I like it. My number 4 was Mind Clash Games. So these are the guys who did Tricarion, Anachrony, Cerebria, and Perseverance, but that was like, I wasn't a fan of that game. The point is, whenever they have a Kickstarter, I want to back it, or I at least want to try it. So like Voidfall
It's an
just
event.
came out.
Every time they have a Kickstarter, right?
Yeah. So now that Voidfall is out, I really want to get a copy because it just looks great and it's usually got solid mechanics behind it. And Perseverance, I found it a bit boring, but there were interesting mechanisms there. Tricarion and Anachrony, I've sung their praises a million times over. But even something like Cerebria, which is difficult to grok, it's still a very unique and interesting concept, and I really like that.
Yeah.
So I just, if you tell me a game is Mind Clash, I'm probably in to try to buy it or play it.
Did you play Cerebria?
I played that once, I believe. It was okay. I was very confused for most of it. Septima, yeah, that's a lighter one. But yeah, I mean, I still will go to them whenever. I'm not going to get Perseverance Chronicles 3 and 4 because I got 1 and 2 and didn't like them. But like Voidfall, I really want to try to pick up a copy. And it's just like, it's an automatic for me to at least try their games. So,
aren't these games from the same designers?
No, they're not. That's a great question.
Oh, I thought it was like the same group of designers that are doing that.
I think they started with the
like
same group of designers. Yeah, I think let me look it up so that I don't mislead everybody around me. But initially,
and the art is very very beautiful, but very similar. I feel.
Sure. Again, art is not part of my rating, so I'm not sure what to say to you.
But I like. But I love Tricarion, and we played Anachrony like 3 weeks ago, and it was so nice.
So like the designers of Cerebria have nothing to do with the designers of Anachrony. Perseverance has one of the same designers as the previous two. Septima has its own designer. So no, I would say no. They have 1 or 2 guys that show up in multiple games, but not one person that's in every game. So I think it dodges my criteria of exclusion.
All right. So a very nice choice. The Mindless games also crossed my mind, but they're not in my top 5. My number 4 is a game that is a publisher that would have been disqualified by your criteria because they are republishing a lot of stuff. Basically, as you said before, they have a good taste, but they're not really giving original concepts out. And some of the games are Not Alone, Noria, Medina, Daimacher, Kitchen Rush, That's Pretty Clever, Terraforming Mars,
Stronghold,
La Granja, yes, Great Western Trail, Flamme Rouge, Panamax, Paper Tale.
Are you just going to keep listing games because they have a lot of games?
Kalimala. And the two, I found the 2 original games that they published, at least if I'm not wrong, at least in my investigation, are Kanban, which is a Vital Lacerda game, but it was published by Stronghold, and Voluspa. So only these 2, Kanban and Voluspa, I believe it's their original designs. But I feel that you can trust them. If they bring something out, it's a company that you should check.
I like them, and I think if you had asked me 5-6 years ago, I might have put them on my list. But I do think they've fallen off since Stephen Bonacore left, and they've just not been as present at the forefront. Maybe they're just relying on Terraforming Mars sales at this point. But they do have great taste. Stronghold's a great thing, but they are more hit and miss to me than the others. So that's why they didn't make it.
All right. So what is your number 3?
My number 3 top publisher is Victory Point Games, who do mostly solo and war games, but they got very famous with one particular game called Nemo's War. And they did other games that I own of theirs: Cruel Necessity, High Treason, which is a brilliant 2-player game where it's the best like court simulation of like a defense versus a prosecution that I've ever seen. Zulus on the Ramparts, Ottoman Sunset, Renegade, which is like the closest thing to Mage Knight that I've found. I really love them, and I love that they used to start by cutting things out in their garage, and they used to come in a little red box. All the games came in the same box with a sleeve over it, and then they used to send you a napkin with the game because when you took it out, like you could still the burn marks from the laser were still on there, so your fingers would get dirty. I love how small they were. I love that they built up after Nemo's War and so on, and they've upped their production quality. But in general, like if someone told me this is a Victory Point game, I would be keen to try it. And they're not super expensive. They don't seem to rip off people. And I think they have a solid background. It's not everyone's taste. They're not the most streamlined. They're almost like the anti Fantasy Flight. You know what I mean? Like they don't try to take all the edges off of everything. They leave things a bit abrasive and clunky, but I like that. I enjoy it very much. And if you like solo games, you already know who they are. So Victory Point Games is my number 3.
Oh, so I don't like solo games. I don't know who they are. And I have only played Nemo from these guys.
That's right.
So, yeah, so let's keep them in our radar.
In our prayers.
So my number 3 is, again, a company that it would have been disqualified by you because that's Capstone Games.
Yep.
And and I cannot say no to a company that has in their list Wildcatters, Arkwright, and the States.
Yep.
And Terra Mystica.
Yep.
I mean, what else do you want from a? I mean,
Three Kingdoms Redux.
And Three Kingdoms Redux, correct. So yeah, I mean, they're bringing these games to the masses.
Yes,
because all of these games, I believe, they were published by obscure companies, and now they are available everywhere in the world by Capstone Games. And I really feel that if Capstone publishes something, then I must have a look at it.
I agree. I think they're a great choice.
They are in my number 3.
That's why they were my honorable mention. I think that's an excellent pick. My number 2 is Ion Game Design. And they did the PAX series, they did the BIOS series, they do Station Fall. So they've done a lot of Eklund games, Phil and Matt. They've done a lot of the new PAX games that are not based on Eklund. So like, I can't remember any of their names right now, but I mean like the designers, but like I really enjoyed PAX Viking. We talked about it recently. I've backed, some newer PAX games as well. And Station Fall was genuinely like, that game's in my top 20 for sure. It was my must play game this weekend and we didn't play it. So I'm so bummed. But basically anything that comes out from them, I think is an auto like must try for me, or at least must find somebody that has it and speak to them about it. And they're even trying to make up for Eklund's sociopathy by hiring people that are like reading to make sure, it's not offensive, or not trying to, preach Eklund's perspectives and everything. And, they're making an effort with that. They also sponsor Heavy Cardboard, who is a great go-to for anyone who likes heavy games. So Ion Game Design for me is a terrific company in terms of their game taste. And I do think that I will always be interested in a game if it has the Ion logo in the bottom.
Oh, high praise again. I already feel that this is one of our most interesting top 5s because we don't have a crossover yet. And we won't have a crossover even with my top 2 game, my number 2 game, because that's publisher, because that's Plotterspillen.
Good
and
choice.
As you said before, it's just these guys that are doing these great games. It's not a big deal. They're doing Food Chain Magnate. They're doing. They have done Antiquity, Indonesia, which is an excellent game. The Great Zimbabwe.
Love the Great Zimbabwe.
I want to play Bass and what's the other, Boats and Roads.
Yeah, Roads and Boats.
So many great games, but I really understand why you disqualified them. And
yeah, and if I didn't, they would be my number one.
My number two.
Yeah, totally.
But again, they're still my number two according to the random selection game from a company.
That's true. A good criteria. If that was my criteria, they would be my number one. Would you like to guess my number one?
I thought I could, before you said Iron Games, but now I cannot.
Well, you're going to kick yourself because it was on your list. It's our first crossover. It's GMT Games. I'm surprised you didn't.
No.
Have GMT on there. If a game says GMT on the cover,
there's no way.
I will play GMT, any GMT game. Basically, I just thought about the fact that if I'm not sure whether to buy a game and I look at the publisher, does it make me want to buy it or not? So I have several games on my list. Like, for example, I have Blackbeard, which is a game that came out, 15 years ago. I have Blackbeard, Golden Age of Piracy or whatever it's called, on my wish list. And the reviews are not great. It's like a 6 out of 10 on BGG. And I was like, I really want a game about Blackbeard, blah, blah, blah. And then I was literally in my head, I was just like, well, it's GMT, so I'll pick it up. Like, that's my logic with GMT. If I wasn't sure about picking up, say, Conquest of Paradise on a trade, I was like, well, it's GMT. I'll try it. Knowing nothing about the game, I'm willing to buy it if it's GMT. I have multiple P500s, and just based on a theme, if I'm interested in the historical. So I just picked up one from their irregular series conflict on P500, which is about Vijayanagara and the Deccan cultures over there. I don't know how it plays. I mean, it's all there if I want to read it, but I'm buying it because GMT is producing it. And that's how it comes down to me. I'm not the biggest hex and counter war game guy out there, so I don't go there automatically. But my favorite game of all time, Virgin Queen, one of the best 18xx's you can play, 1846, Cuba Libre, the entire coin series, which I adore, every one that I've played. I own Cuba Libre, Liberty or Death, Fire in the Lake, the Falling Sky, and I've just backed Vijayanagara. Dominant Species, which is in my top 10. Sekigahara, which I believe is the best 2-player game that you can play if it's a war game. And, Twilight Struggle, which I found a new love for later on. This is all GMT. This is all the same publisher. So for me, if I'm not sure if a game is good and it says GMT, if it has that red logo on it, I'll buy it. So that's where I am. Wow. GMT is my number one publisher of all time with the conditions that I have set.
All right. So, yeah, I'm just going to repeat what I said about GMT, that there are so great games in that company, but at the same time, you need to look a little bit more because there are so many, not so much great games.
Okay, but which bad GMT games have you played? Which bad GMT games have you played?
The one with the First World War that we didn't finish.
Fields of Despair is not a bad game. We just didn't finish it. It's
not a bad game. You're right. Yeah. But it's not a good game either.
I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I just never wrapped my head around it. And like I said,
for
I don't
our
do
listeners,
hex and counter,
yes, this is a game, a war game for 2 players. The theme is the First World War, and you cannot see the opponent's pieces. So you attack a hexagon and you ask, do I kill anything there? And the other player should be honest with you and say, yes, you killed something. Or,
that's
no,
not true. You
no,
flip over the counters.
That was a 3. That was a 3.
It's not true. You're lying. You played the counters upside down.
This is what I remember.
They can't just pretend. But there are counters that are blanks. So you're bluffing, but you're not playing and just imagining where everything goes. That's not how the game goes at all.
Yeah, true, but you have to trust your opponent. Otherwise, you cannot play.
No,
right?
because they just flip over the counter. You don't have to trust the opponent.
No, you don't. That's what I remember.
Yeah, you do. You remember wrong, my friend.
No. but don't you remember that was your first question in the game? That okay, but what if you're lying? I mean, the reinforcements maybe.
Maybe
you
the
don't
reinforcements.
know what reinforcements.
Yeah, there is definitely some hidden aspects to it for sure, and it wasn't my favorite game, but I wouldn't say it was a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I haven't played a game that I dislike from them, and I've played dozens of their games. Like
Did
Pericles,
you like fire in the leg. You like that?
Yes, a lot of people hated Pericles, but I loved Pericles. So this is my list, right? Like, I think it's brilliant. I do. And granted, I haven't played, they have a lot of games. That's the problem, is I can't say that I've played every game, but everything that I have played from them has at the very least been interesting, which is more than I can say for 90% of publishers. Like, Fantasy Flight games to me are boring. Like, there's nothing interesting in them. You play them, you know how it's going to go before you open it, because they've tried so hard to remove all the edges and make it super fucking streamlined that the game is just a generic game at this point. They've taken the soul out of it. GMT games, if nothing, are interesting. And then from there, you can see if you like it or not. So yeah,
they have the opposite process, I guess.
Exactly, make it as clunky.
We're not gonna fix anything. We're not gonna take. Just okay. We have a designer. Do whatever you wanna do. Just publish your game. Yeah. No, I mean I won't argue against GMT. I mean they are in my top 5. So would you? If I tell you that it's not in your top 5, would you? Do you wanna guess what is my number 1 game? The publisher.
Whirligig.
You were close enough. It's Sierra Madre.
Oh, you can. I mean, you could have just gone for Ion because they republished all of Sierra Madre.
Yes. When you said Ion, I was thinking, oh, I could have gone with Ion, but no, I'm the old guy, and I will go with Sierra Madre because they were the guys that opened the corridor, a wide road for this. Ion is Eklund's son, right?
No, I think it's owned by another guy, but I do think they have a partnership with Eklund's son.
Oh, anyway. Okay, so Sierra Madre is Phil Eklund's company, and they have published the most famous and my favorite PAX games, PAX Pamir, PAX Porfiriana, and PAX Renaissance, plus John Company. Yes. So this quadruple of games, I mean, and the way that they implement and they mix science in their games is what I love, I think. Or, I mean, maybe the way they are trying to mix science. Because some people will argue that this is not really science, so let's not go there. But still, if it's a Sierra Madre game, 100% I want to play it.
I don't disagree. I do think Ion won it for me because they have most of the PAX games, the BIOS games, High Frontier, but they also had Station Fall, and they've expanded the PAX series to be a little bit more, and they're making them a little more approachable to some extent. And so I had to go with Ion.
And it's better production,
and also,
right?
if I went with Sierra Madre, I would go against my rule of not just all the games by the same designer, right? Because every Sierra Madre game...
But there is called Werle there.
That's true. The one thing that accepts it is literally John Company. That's the difference. And
Pax Pamir also.
No, but that's a co-design with Phil Eklund. He has his name on the box.
Yeah,
so
it's
it
a
doesn't
co-design,
count.
yeah.
But yeah. So that's why I went with Iron Games, but I completely understand. You should have gone with Iron Games probably, but be the old guy in the room shouting. Yeah. That's fine. I'm happy for you. And just to everybody that knows,
I feel that this is an excellent top 9. I mean, the combination of our choices. It's an excellent top 9. And if we add the honorable mentions, it goes to
quite a lot.
Well, you had Spielworks.
Most importantly,
and
if we add them together, GMT
Capstone, I
will
get
be the
like-
top because it was the only one that crossed over in our top 5. So
Yeah,
GMT
that's
is
true,
the
and it wasn't your-
winner.
No, I didn't want that.
Unless you switch it to Ion Games, then Ion
Okay.
Games wins. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yes, that's also interesting. Okay, I will leave that to our listeners. Who our listeners, I mean, must not forget to let us know what their top 5 publishers are over at our Board Game Geek Guild, or you can actually no, there's no or. What happened? I mean, usually we were saying that they can
Fine,
also
here,
find
here
us in
you go.
Instagram, but or in
Here
our
you go.
Instagram account, which is what. And also in YouTube, yeah, just leave a comment in YouTube or in Instagram. Instagram is even easier, I feel. Just leave a comment in Instagram and say that Elias is wrong because this, and this. Okay, that's all we want from you. You can find all the links in our episode descriptions. Thank you very, very much for this.
Are you just literally doing my part today? I feel like today you just keep doing my part. All right.
No,
That brings us to the end of this.
Thank you for their comments.
Okay. All right. I'll thank them for other stuff now.
Yeah,
Thank you. Brings us
their
to
future comments, you know.
the end of this Tabletop Sessions. Thank you so much for listening. Or as Ipo would say, thank you very, very much for your comments. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Tabletop Sessions. Join the conversation, share a fun story of board game shenaniganism, and let us know what your top 5 was this month over at our Board Game Geek Guild. You can find the link to all of these in the episode description. We also have a YouTube channel. You can listen to the podcasts for free. And you can watch some gaming sessions for free. We'll be back in a month, kind of ish. And until then, there'll be a Christmas episode. We'll be back in a month. Happy Thanksgiving. And until then, to quote one of my favorite writers, God damn it, you got to be kind. Say bye, Ipo.
Bye, guys.
Tabletop,
Such a
tabletop,
delayed reaction.
table,
Don't
tabletop,
understand.
I'm trying to have
tabletop,
random reactions, and I think I'm
tabletop,
successful.
Perhaps. I feel like you've
Right.
restarted from the beginning.
Oh, maybe there is a pattern.